So on behalf of YSI and our board members and Yukon University, who we share these presentations with, a warm welcome to all of you. Really thank you for being out on a nice spring evening. I don't know about you, but it's nice to hear the robins singing, and I'm watching those buds swell every day. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't think you would have been able to convince me that the snow wasn't going to be here till July. So it's I know everyone wants to be outside and enjoying this, and we really appreciate you being inside with us tonight. Before we get started, I think it's really important to recognize that the Beringia Center, the beautiful Beringia Center, where we meet tonight, is on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin Dun and the Tonquichan Council. And I'm a relative newcomer to Whitehorse and the Yukon, and I feel very privileged to be able to share in the landscapes that have been lived in and on and with for so many generations. And that'll be an important theme of the presentations that you'll hear this evening. YSI is a member-based organization, and your support really helps us to continue to bring these talks. We try to bring roughly one presentation a month to the community and make them available to the full community. If you aren't a member, we really encourage you to join. There's a membership table outside that you'll see at the break or after the presentations tonight, and we certainly encourage you to become a member. That support really helps. If you have been a member and you're not sure if it's time to renew, you can check in at the desk, and we can help you with that renewal as well. I also want to make a special note of thanks to Air North. Air North was very generous in providing us with airfare to import our 2 speakers tonight. So we're very grateful to them. We're also grateful to the Yukon Fish and Wildlife Enhancement Trust, and they are another sponsor of tonight's event, as well as some other upcoming events at YSI. And I'd like to invite Philip Merchant, who's the chair of the Yukon Fish and Wildlife Enhancement Trust, to say a few words about their organization and the work that they do in this space. Go.
Great, thank you very much. I'll keep it brief because really we want to talk about fish. So the Yukon Fish and Wildlife Enhancement Trust is a creation of the Umbrella Final Agreement, Chapter 27. There's an endowment, and our mission is sort of clear mandate to restore, protect, and enhance fish and wildlife and habitat for future generations. And I include animals in that, generations of animals and fish, not just human generations. We provide funding for practical, mostly community-driven projects that make a meaningful difference. Proposals are submitted starting in January till March. Then we sit down and look at them all and have a great time going through. The vast majority are very worthwhile, great projects and very different in nature. We generally fund up to about $15,000, and that allows us to fund about a dozen to 15 projects a year. They're often smaller projects that they're in sort of niche categories that are missed by other funding sources. Research has shown that environmental education produces a very high rate of return for the dollars spent on it. Some work at McGill looked into that, and so I think we're on track for providing funding and encouraging those. We focus on hands-on, practical sort of problem-solving initiatives with local importance. Youth engagement is very, very high on our list. Creating capacity in communities and fostering sort of the stewardship values. Some of the past and current examples of the projects that have been funded are the Teslin Bird Banding and Observatory Station, Yukon school-based camps and hunts, Southern Lakes Caribou Research, Stocked Lakes initiatives, and the Teslin Lake Trout research. We funded one this year called Teslin Wild Little Women. So who doesn't want to be a part of funding an initiative like that, getting young girls out into the forest? Fish and wildlife, fish and fish habitat work is important. Monitoring habitat restoration, stewardship, education, community-based enhancement efforts, all of those. We're very happy to contribute whole or in part to land-based culture environment and future fostering of that culture. This evening's presentation is sort of exactly what reflects the values we deem important. I'd also like to mention we have a scholarship, the Alex Van Bibber Scholarship, which is 2 scholarships of $2,000 each per year for post-secondary students in studies that contribute in some way to our stewardship goals. I'd like to acknowledge all the other contributors to the work that's going to be presented tonight. Thank you all for being here, and it's a great honor to be part of this group. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip. And again, there is an opportunity at the break afterwards, or at the break and afterwards, if you want to find a little bit more about some of that project funding. And we'll be bringing some of those projects as part of YSI presentations in the future here. I know there's folks joining us online. I hope you're able to hear. If you do have any comments, or if you're having trouble hearing, if you could just put a note in the comments, and we'll try to track so that you're able to hear us. I am so excited to have the privilege to introduce our 2 guest speakers tonight, who I mentioned that we imported from the deep south to join us here in Whitehorse, and you're in for a real treat. Both of these individuals are amazing storytellers with remarkable careers, remarkable success stories, work with communities. And just good friends, which is so important in this business. The run of show will be Michael Sullivan will make a presentation. We'll take a short break, allow people to stretch their legs a little bit. We'll come back. Lorne Fitch will make a second presentation, and then we're really hoping to have a fair amount of time for dialogue afterwards. We really want to know what you think about what you heard, what you relate to, what you have questions about, and hopefully get into a good discussion. For those of you online, we'll try to collect those questions as well. So you'll learn a lot about both these individuals as you hear from them. I'll say by way of formal introduction first that Michael Sullivan is a Canadian conservation scientist, strong background in fish ecology, fish management, fisheries management, but is much more than that. He's a systems thinker. He works across multiple species and multiple environments in highly holistic ways. And again, I think you're in for a real treat for the presentation that you'll hear from him. And I'll let you know a little bit more about Lorne Fitch after the break. So please join me in a warm welcome for Michael Sullivan. Sneaking behind you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Yeah, it's a real honor to speak to you. You had introduced me as a conservation scientist. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a moose hunter, I'm a mountain person, I'm a sheep hunter. I get paid by a government to be their Actually, my title is Chieftain of Conservation Sciences. They left Chieftain Conservation Sciences. Let me pick my own title. The chief title is already taken, and I have a Celtic Irish background. Chieftain. That's what I'm known as, Chieftain of Conservation Science. But my whole role is to try to find a way to let fish and bats and caribou and bull trout and people live together in harmony. And the problem with cumulative effects is huge and working on it for years. And I really wasn't coming to solutions as a Western scientist until I started to bring in my association with the Indigenous peoples. I really been so fortunate over the last several decades to work a lot with Indigenous peoples, the elders, to listen to their stories, and really change how that world view of mine got to change and start to solve this problem of effects. So one of my teachers, Jeremy Q, whose dream is this? The grizzly, dreaming of the stockholm, dreaming of the grizzly. Terry says, Mike, it's been such a long time. A white person would think that with all problems, or all the problems facing the droplets of water, or all the problems facing the sockeye. And as Western scientists, we have this great track record of solving the little problems. We know so much about selenium and what it does to the baby fish, about what sediment does to the fish eggs, what gas bubble trauma does when they go over the dams, about what overfishing does in the Alaska Gyre, and we can't keep salmon in the Fraser River. We can't keep Chinook in the Yukon River. We can't put it together to solve a problem with a system. We know so much about the little boxes. I don't know about how to make the system work. We're great at the little pieces. We can't solve the big problems. And I want to give a big shout out, Miigwech, Terry. I lost so many of the elders. It even chokes me up even looking at the picture. COVID tore through our native community like a wildfire. A Cree elder cannot not meet you and shake your hand and hug you. Oh my God. So I'm not Cree, I'm white, I self-identify as white. I've hunted, fished, trapped, lived with these people for so many years. And the cool thing is we share such a worldview, and everybody here shares that worldview of a respect for nature and our place in it. So just a little shout out to some of my teachers. If you go to these communities, these folks have in the community the most expert diplomats, negotiators, people you've ever met that are so eloquent. And that comes from, sadly, having to fight for their rights for so many decades. They've gained that wisdom. And us biologists are so bad at translating our cool Western science into political, social solutions. We just can't get there. My thing is, we should humbly ask our Indigenous neighbors to be our allies, because we know what's in the boxes, and they know how the boxes fit together, and they know how the political system works. Together, I think, because we share this worldview, we can be great allies. And I've managed to take that worldview and translate it into my family. This is my daughter, Sierra. She's just, I say finishing a PhD. She's trying to finish a PhD at UBC in conservation genetics of trouts. But while she was growing up, we homeschooled, and I would take her for these walks in the forest that would last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And we would travel through the backcountry of Banff and Jasper, Western Alberta, and we would see just amazing things. We would see bull trout, bull trout, bull trout. We would catch bull trout. We would catch big fish. We'd see these huge animals in the backcountry. She started working for Parks Canada, and she and I found lakes that Parks Canada didn't know had lake trout in them. New findings, right? Amazing things. And what we really found out with our remote travels was that bulls, rainbows, lake trout are often abundant, often easy to see, and in a lot of places. And the stories that you see, those black and white photographs with big strings of fish, that almost seem like fantasy, they're still true in the backcountry if you go far enough back. And that is just what Sierra and I got to see and realize is this is what good looks like. It's such a stark contrast to what we see in Alberta in the last few decades. This little guy, Athabasca rainbow trout, native to that Hinton Jasper area, that is about this big. It's about an 8-year-old. Oh yeah, if you put them in acrylic, they'd make a great tie clip. Beautiful little fish, native rainbow trout. 1949, R.B. Miller, one of the first biologists at U of A, 1949. Rainbow trout present in incredible numbers. Every little creek, beaver dam, main tributary, main McLeod. Incredible numbers. 2014, endangered. 1949, incredible numbers everywhere. 2014, endangered. While we watched, while we monitored, while we had biologists working on rainbow trout, we monitored it to extinction, extirpation, right? Bull trout, once used to, it's Alberta's provincial fish, once used to be common, widespread, big, 2012, threatened. Electrofishing, Bow River, 2012, I think it was, found a grand total of bupkis, nothing in the Bow River in that area. We went from most common treen stroke to gone, right? And that's the amazing thing. Biologists in Alberta now, young biologists, shocking, only see Alberta trout as endangered species, not as when Lorne and I were growing up is what you caught on a willow switch and a perch hook with a grasshopper at the end of it. They only know them as endangered species, be it a bull, a west slope cut, Athabasca rainbow. So what happened? Well, it was habitat. No, it wasn't. No, it was hybridization with introduced fish. No, it wasn't. It was, and each of those things, the 3 H's we call them, habitat, hybrids, and harvest, we have strong voices promoting each one of those, what I call threats, as a benefit. Oh, no, the culvert is really good. That actually prevents the exotic fish from moving up, says the highway department. Oh, no, the off-roaders say, we're the ones in the backcountry. We're the ones that see what's bad things are going on. The forestry companies are doing. We're the good guys. No, the anglers, we're reducing the numbers because they're stunted and we got to make them bigger. No, if you stock pouring rainbows, that'll take the pressure off. Everybody is promoting their own self, their own group as we're the benefit. It's those other guys. They rationalize their worldview as right. They each blame each other because all their friends agree, so it must be right. And we argue for 50 years and we write these fish are gone reports, right? And the thing about a worldview is you don't even know it's a worldview. You just, everyone else has these views or they're wrong because you know you're right. So when you hear in your arguments and discussions, why did the caribou go away? Oh, it was over harvest. Oh, it was habitat. When you hear it is, there is no it. That's what the elders teach me. Blaming all fish, caribou, bat, decline on one thing, that is a biased worldview already. You put yourself in a box and said every other box is wrong. And I really learned this growing up with the Asine Kinatuwak, the Asine stone. Winawak people of the, so people of the stone, that's the Cree people that live on the edge of the Canadian Shield, right? It was the Peter Ballantyne band I grew up. And as I'm hanging around, really thank my teachers there, especially Angelique Marafati, the young woman on the left. That was a picture of her probably in 1930s, eh? Pretty cool. 100 years ago. And I knew that lady, didn't speak English. But I'd listened to all these stories, and the stories, the Cree stories were all about all the different animals. If you listen to what's the crow creation story in the room next door, Miles? Yeah. And it's just this story that goes on with all these interesting, colorful adventures that all the different animals have. And that was the Cree stories I grew up with too, listening to somebody's kukum, telling these really rich stories. And the cool thing about the stories was the Cree creation story, maybe you guys heard this, it's Ojibwe and Cree, where all the animals died down, and it wasn't, really, really cool. And Nikik otter wasn't cool. Nikik that mud, and it wasn't big, strong Amos, the beaver that went down. It was Wachusk. It was the little muskrat that went down and got the patch of mud and put it on Turtle's back, and it grew to become Turtle Island. It wasn't the fastest or the biggest. It was the little guy that you don't think much of. And the point is, nature is rich. Humans aren't the biggest or best or the brightest or even the biggest. You know, it wasn't big grizzly bear. It wasn't Musquat that did the things. Everybody has good and bad, right? Don't put the animals in boxes. Don't say this is a good animal and that is a bad animal. That's what we learned. Everything has pros and cons. A Cree person would never look at a little sculpin and go, what good is it? But white people that I talk to goes, oh, that's bait, right? That's what the bull trout eats. And I go, no, you know, he's my relative. I'm alive, and so is he. We have a lot in common, Sculpins and me. We're both alive. That's what Cree people say. Things are a package deal. There's not just good parts and bad parts. Forestry is not all bad, not all good. Harvest is not all bad, not all good. Exotic fish. Don't put things in boxes. Don't be such a white man, they say. Think of the big picture. So by putting things in boxes, this is what we do as biologists. We write these recovery plans, status reports, all tending towards supporting our worldview. And good Lord, Lorne and I have written enough status reports and COSEWIC reports. And what we do is always the same thing. We write these laundry lists, scary things, and we go, oh yeah, dams and river entrainment and water quality and brook trout.
He's stepping away from his mic.
And then we pick things and we go, you know, what's the low hanging fruit? What's the easiest thing to do? And we'll work on it. And what we do is we will continue to work with, we will increase the club, we will continue to work with, we will do the same damn things we've been doing all along, but we're going to work really hard this time. We'll really do it this time. Doing more of the same things we did during the collapses, right? We totally needed a new way to think of the problem, a logical bridge between listing the scary and coming up with meaningful action. This is really the solution to, it isn't me, it's them. How do you pull yourself out of that? And as Terry described in this painting, you know, we're just part of creation. We're part of this. We're magical beings, magical world. Think of the bigger picture. So instead of trying to fix that box, Terry, Bernice, the others have tried to teach me what is the effects of all those boxes on the big thing we value, functioning ecosystem, our healthy caribou populations, our healthy fish. What are the effect of all the little boxes, right? So in that sense, if you write a management plan these days, someone will say, well, you better put in on list number 28, we should integrate traditional knowledge. And it's just this little line item. And I'm going, you know, I don't want to integrate traditional knowledge. We're the ones that screw up. I want to say these boxes are really good science. We should integrate science into traditional knowledge because they seem to have a worldview that works better. So in my view, I'm trying to integrate our work into an Indigenous, this is how the system works. Here's a really simple example. This is a deal the people's the forestry roads and create all sorts of way more road action and what was going to do the people. So I went around and sat down and drank really bad tea and coffee with a bunch of typically older ladies. They seem to have the long institutional memory, and said, hey, how many fish camps did there used to be back in the 60s? Fish camps were where the whole family would get together on an island and fish all summer and everybody would be there. And they would say, oh yeah, back in the 60s, we probably had, in this area, probably 28, 30 fish camps. And it would take them 5 hours to describe all the families and stuff. So through the miracle of GIS and information, I feel, in the 1960s, when you had 28 fish camps, we were probably around 1 kilometer per kilometer squared of road density. What was it in 1980s? Oh yeah, there was only 5 families or something with the fish camps, 8 families, and the road density was probably about there. By 2000, there was only 2 families had fish camps. The fish weren't there anymore. The fish weren't big. The men were off doing firefighting work. There's lots of roads. There's lots of other people. Nobody wanted to go to a fish camp. Cool. The pulp mill came in and said, we'd like to build a pulp mill. This will be really good. Give you jobs. And it'll be about 9 kilometers per kilometer squares of roads. What did you lose when you lost fish camps? The elders and grandmothers just told me those red dots. As a quantitative ecologist, I can draw a curve and I can relate road density to fish camps. But the problem was, if you want a bunch of fish camps, I need to take that 9 kilometers per kilometer square down to 1 to get the fish camps back. The companies said, oh yeah, we can go from 9 to 7. And I go, that's nonsense. That does nothing to increase the number of fish camps. And the problem with losing fish camps is, I don't know if you've ever been to a fish camp, but the men are out fishing and the moms are doing work. So the grandmother is talking to the kids in Nihilwa, in Cree. And the kids are listening to the stories. Suddenly the kids are speaking Cree and they're listening to grandma and they're learning the creation story and they're learning the pantheon of cool stories and they're learning the language. And fish camps mean grandmother time. Grandmother time is language and culture. You're going to lose that if you lose fish camps. So pulp company, if you want to put in that many roads, build an elder lodge next to a skateboard park. We need both those things. I need to attract kids and I need to have them listen to grandma speaking Cree. It doesn't cost much to build a skateboard park. Also, there's no fish. And instead of up a gas station of tags and everybody drinking Coke and Cheetos, you better subsidize the grocery store. So that was a real solution. I need an elders lodge and a skateboard park, and I need a subsidized grocery store. If all you can give me is 7 kilometers per kilometer squared of roads, we're going to lose fish camps. Of course, white folks think in boxes. They go, we're a pulp company. We don't build skateboard parks. We went nowhere. But that was the solution. But they couldn't get out of the word
Isn't it?
pulp company. We don't subsidize groceries. But that curve, the elders told me, it's called a stress response. I'll just quickly go. But if I can get those curves, like this is, hey, what was it? What was this creek? Was it good in the past? What is it now? What about the habitat? Was it good? And when did the fish population go away? These are stressor response curves, two scary things. Natural habitat and today's disturbed habitat. And through the miracle of arithmetic, I can say, hey, those are the curves. Where are we today? We're at a 3 and a 10. I do the math and I can tell you what the cumulative effect of those two scary things are. I can add the two boxes together. It's actually a multiplicative thing and it's a little fancier than that, but I can add more. I can add nutrients to it. This is a simple way to put scary things in boxes, multiply the boxes together with some neat math, and get an answer. When Andrew Prowl, a really smart scientist, looked at this, he goes, Sully, that is too simple. And then we started working through it, and we got it published in Trend Ecology and Evolution. That's where real scientists publish. Yeah. So that's what we do now. I go to meetings and stuff, and I ask you, bull trout are declining in the Yukon, let's say, for example. Tell me some scary things. Tell me some scary things. Put them in boxes. And typically, I'll listen to anything. If you say otters are killing all the fish, we'll have a box called otter. If you say it's overfishing, we'll have a box called overfishing. And typically you get stress response that look like that. That's temperature on the x-axis and number of fish on the y-axis. And they get the most rainbow trout at 16 degrees, but 12 is too cold, and 20 is too hot, and the Goldilocks zone is right in there. Mortality is a straight line, and brook trout, they really drop fast, and phosphate, we have science about that. Anyway, I put these boxes, temperature, mortality, brook trout, phosphate, dam, culvert, I can get 20 boxes. And it's just what the audience tells me. what conversations with people tell me what scare them, and we integrate them together. Like I say, we got it published. And this is how I do mathematically the elders' worldview of scary things in boxes, minimum flow in February at hydrological depth, the phosphate, selenium, temperature, and all zoom in mathematically to the big thing we value, status of fish. And we get those threats from public meetings like this, from studies, from literature reviews. Yeah, there's cool science. Ends up looking like this. It's one of those blue boxes is what I call a slider or a lever. And I set this up for Harris and Barrett system for Athabasca rainbows. And I said, yeah, this is our best guess for Venus, month temperature, small thing fragmentation, total footprint, habitat loss, selenium, whirling disease, all those things. We set it up and put the button that says, they gone. And it tells us, oh, the big drivers were angling up, sediment brought culverts, culverts brought it down, native fish really brought it down. Equally important, it said, wasn't selenium, wasn't February flow, was not rainbow trout, was not temperature. It told us what are, of the 20 scary
That's
things,
what Mike he's speaking into. And he goes, walks away.
and what 16 probably don't. And of those, what really matter, if I'm not going to get on native trout and maybe fix the culvert, grab the low-hanging fruit, and make much of a difference, right? In Alberta, we call it Joe modeling. This is what mentors, basically a white society. Have elders? Weird. We have old people. Lorne and I are not elders. Joe was one of my, want to know anything fish, ask Joe. So we call it Joe model. And it's not a technique to come up with the answer. It's not a technique. Exactly what will happen. Hypothesis. Given our best box, this is probably the 4 boxes we should push. And of those 4 boxes, you better push this one really hard, is our hypothesis. And as a hypothesis, what do scientists do? We test hypotheses. So here's an example. We went and ran down at Rocky Creek, down west Rocky Mountain House, Clearwater River tributary, had this typical east slope mix of fish. It was trash. The bull trout were gone. Just overfishing, culverts. And it was just one of those ones where we'd go to it and we'd plant some willows here and then we'd fix that culvert over there. And we called it sprinkling fairy dust. We'd do a little bit here and a little bit there. And then next year we do something else. And it just wasn't going anywhere. So we did all the modeling, did the Joe modeling, and we did it up like really scientists. Like we had a control area and a treatment area, and all those X's were where I did the electrofishing. This graph just says we ran the Joe model, said of the 20 things for matter, you could probably do 2 with the dollars you have, and of those 2, probably going to be clean effort and sediment. If you can throw the levers, there's a mathematical see a response. So we did. This Jessica Riley tried by planting willows, but enough willows to and blocking quad trails make a difference. So we actually pushed hard enough to make a difference, said the Joe model. So we pushed those levers enough mathematically to go, this might have a difference. And low and mature bull trout increased by 300%. Baby bull trout increased by 500%. And the other place didn't increase at all. And so of the 20, 4 mattered. And angry bull trout come back, and the scientist in me goes, so with the sediment. And my elders would say, doesn't matter, Mike, you brought it back. And I don't know which one it was. And that's maybe for universities to do. Somebody else can do that. My job Bull trout back to good. Well, not good. So focus more on the solution than the science. The science is a stepping stone to the solution. Here's another example. You guys heard of Calgary? The Bow River? This is an amazing. See these in red? Canadians live in those red counties. Half. Lower Mainland and the Edmonton Calgary corridor. And the damn Bow River runs right through that. That's the Bow River runs through Calgary. Look at cutthroats and bulls. They now it's got rainbows and brown. But the fish are going downhill. Who'd have thought? And the declining electric. This is the graph. That's important. This is the graph that 25 years of monitoring rainbow trout, and those bars are uncertainty and the gray is the mathematical. But the decline is like, wow, like over time, the bull trout, the rainbows have dropped 50%. A lot of noise. We're not really sure, but there's a lot, there's decline. For sure, it's a decline. Keep that picture in your mind. There's noise around, always will be. So we set up one of these Joe models by these meetings, and we made all these lists of scary things, and then we sort of, the red ones are we actually picked somebody, you know, so okay, Paul Christensen, Mike Sullivan are going to do the whirling disease part, and you know, Lorne, you're going to do the flows, and you know, Sarah was going to do the road salt, and we just assigned everybody a box to come up with an answer. And here's an example: the guides that were really concerned about the damn fish eating, right? The pelicans, that's the problem. So okay, we got a pelican. Okay, to Jenny Earl, did a bang up with a literature review. This is probably a response. How many pelicans you're going to trout to cause a decline? She came up with this drafts stress response curve. That's the best guess. So the idea is that, yeah, if we're at 500 pelicans, we'll start to see a problem. If we're at 2,000 pelicans, we got a real problem. We're at 4,000 pelicans, we got a major problem, you know. So then, well, how many pelicans do you have? To the miracle of ArcGIS survey on your phone, she set up a really cool thing on the cell phone that we get all the guides have cell phones, of course. So she set this up so the guides, when they would see a pelican, would type in "saw a pelican," right? Now the guides are sending in the data automatically, and it's the guides' data. And the guides said that box of pelicans is what scares us. Now it's their box and it's their data. And in pretty damn short order, we had data that said, hey, May 4.1 pelicans is the average number seen on a reach, and 38. And we had data that the guides, it's their curve and their data. We put it in the and we go, thank you. We're around 4 to 40 pelicans. Once we get the numbers, we're shooting pelicans. But today we're at 40. So thank you. That's your data. Appreciate it. In the model. Good. Thank you. As soon as we hit 1,000, here's a box 22. Right now we're cool. We're cool. We're cool. It's in the model. We're cool. It's their data. And the guides bought it. And they believed it. Because it's their data. They believed it. So this is the Joe model we're working with now. We're losing out fish. Angling is bringing it down, and that's when the bunch of the water goes off to irrigation to grow corn and stuff, and the rainbows go down the irrigation canal. They're gone. They ain't coming back. Once you go into a cornfield, you're no longer rainbow trout. And flow, absolutely. It's got 3 dams on it. So TransAlta, when you turn on to watch the Oilers games, we lose flow. Pelicans is in. It's not bringing down. Thank you. It's in there. Invertebrates. Oh, we're losing bugs. Yeah, it's in there. It's not down yet, but it's in there. Lorne for telling what's the matter. Road salt. Oh, yep. Been scared about road salt. But thank you for bringing it in there. It's It's not the level yet, but road salt's in there. 6 ppd, you know, the tire compound that comes off winter tires and goes in, it really kills trout. And we got it in the model and we're measuring it. It's not there yet. It's in the model. Thank you. So all the concerns that the audience had, that all the meetings, it's in there. You tell us river otters are a problem, I don't laugh at you. Put it in the model with a curve and how many otters. Pelicans are a problem in the model. Absolutely. And then I can come up, wow. The big problems are half of the fish are disappearing because of angling, maybe 30% because they're turned into cornfields, about 20% because of flow. And here's why I fail. Half the problem might be overfishing, 30% irrigation, 20% flow. The two critical issues that I can't solve are HD, human dimensions issues. If it was just one box, we could fix the box. But I got 3 boxes now. One is half the problem, one is 30% of the problem, one is 20% of the problem. So the first
Not a
issue.
very good talk, I don't think.
He's in a classroom. He mustn't have very many people.
Okay. Your model says
Must be out.
in irrigation.
Yeah.
Don't restrict me unless I go to Transel and they
Or
go.
else put a mic on.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you can't even see him
other guy. So
at the
don't
photo of.
Yeah.
He's just stepping away all the time.
the other and the right. And the uncertainty cloud, a big restriction, small effect. If I reduce angling by 50%, so the problem is 50% problem angling. If I reduce that by 50%, and reducing a catch and release fishery by 50% means you don't fish in July. I mean, it's a big lever. And if I reduce that by 50%, now angling is 25% problem and training is 30. I've only reduced the total problem by a little bit. I've made a huge change to the anglers, but I'm not going to see it in the answer because that's only 25% of the big problem, right? So I push the lever hard on you and I can't see the answer. So remember I thought the graph had noise, and if I push the angle really hard, I will change this by 25% and mathematically I can't see it. So when I say, I'm going to cut you off, you're not fishing the Bow River in July, and you go, does it make a difference? And I go, no. Mathematically, I can't prove it. And if I go to TransAlta and say that, they laugh. If you cut like flow by 50%, it'll make a 10% difference in the bull in the population. I won't see it. Damn it. And those are huge social and real costs. Can't see it. So the problem was, and this is a real world problem, the blame game. We said, hey, we got to shut down a lot of fishing. And we made a national post. Anglers fear stream closure is coming. Blame industry and recreation. Anglers are being used as a scapegoat for what we see as broader problems. Don't blame us, blame them. Don't push the lever on us. That classic blame game. The uncertainty cloud. We even made it into a textbook. I failed so bad I got into a textbook. Once the issue became politicized, Minister Ball, he said when he spoke recovery plan, she said she wasn't convinced the science was strong enough. Of course the science isn't strong enough. It's a hypothesis test. I don't know. That's why I do the experiment. If I knew the answer, it would be an experiment. But she said, no, you can't prove that that would work. So don't do it. The only way I can prove it is to do it. Yeah, anyway, I lost. Human dimensions, wisdom was the problem here, not science. More science wasn't going to help this. Wisdom. So the elders taught me to move along. It almost worked. And it did in the Rocky River Creek case, right? I think it was that worked because it was small enough and I could convince the groups. But once I got to the big dogs, some of you saw a talk today on bats. Once I got to the big dogs where it's in hundreds of millions of dollars, the blame game and the uncertainty cloud swamp, but I know I'm on the right path. And I can win this if it wasn't me, but if it was the whole Blackfoot Confederacy and most of the Nihiwa and the Dene and all.
I might have to get maybe
Yeah.
booked a few times.
We need allies. I think we have a path out, but we
You
need
need to keep up with the theme.
again.
No.
Big lesson. Human effects modeling usually fails, but I think I got a way to get out of that, and it's working. It's integrating this Western science, this Indigenous worldview. I listen to everybody. I listen a lot, and I put those in. Pelicans, otters, whatever you tell me, I take you seriously. And sometimes the data is easy to get. A summer of guides was good enough. And if there's one lesson the elders have taught me, it's this one. People don't care about the truth. They just don't want to be wrong. Really. Nothing else from me. Take that. You can understand and avoid that trap. You're a better person or scientist than 99% of others. I'll end with a lesson the elders taught me about kakwa.
Sounds like the elders are training.
Thank you. The elders say, when you get a kakwa, he will turn and turn. And they will, they will say, kakwa apatham, kakwa apasapatham yakatu. The kakwa looks backwards, but he moves forward. That's what he's teaching. So look in your past, look at the mistakes you've made, but keep moving forward. Don't dwell on those mistakes. Kakwa apasapatham yakatu. Porcupine, porcupine looks back and moves forward. Hi, masicho, merci, thank you.
That was amazing, Mike. I'm sure everyone's wheels are turning. Lots to think about, lots to talk about. As I mentioned at the outset, you may
I
have
don't
some
think so, no.
that hold on to those. Give you a chance to legs here for line. I got 10 to 8. Let's say we start back again at 8 o'clock. So break, stretch your legs, have a chat, talk to each other about what you just heard. Chase Mike if you want, and get a few answers from him as well. And we'll start back here in 10 minutes. Thanks so much. Yes, memberships. Which is to be by Lorne Fitch. And Lorne is also from Alberta, makes his Lethbridge, the retired biologist from Fish and Wildlife. But like Mike, much more towards Lorne's wisdom is what's developed by that. And again, I'll share more and his ideas and philosophies towards the end.
You can't see him, right?
So, again, please join Lorne Fitch.
Well, good evening. First of all, ASI for bringing Mike a little south, the deep south, and to Mike Miles Brown organization and getting us here and
Miles,
terms forward. Much appreciated. Michael, you wisdom. As a recovering biologist, I'm going to bring this to you. I think that one of the things I talk to you about, and well, back up. I'll give you a story, a long story. But Mark Twain, some advice, he said, don't tell fish stories where they fit, and don't tell fish stories where they fit. But I'm going to tell you a story. But fish are the vehicle for the story. might become more obvious as I go through this. And the advance button. Yep. Okay, thanks. So, like Michael, I'm gonna delve into cumulative effects and shifting. I'm glad there's some in the audience, because I'm going to tell you that one day you're going to walk in and you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to say to yourself, damn, when did I get old? Well, of course, it happens slowly and insidiously and cumulatively. And all of a sudden, there you are with monochromatic hair and hopefully wisdom about what precipitated all of this. My grandparents, steaders in Central Alberta, they arrived when it was the Northwest Territories. They settled in 1900, and they thought they were the frontier. Ironically, they missed the bison by about years. They missed grizzly by about 5 years. But still, this impression had come to this place that's fresh and new, and there was opportunities for them to realize things that already changed. And if there's this, and maybe it's presumptuous, someone from Alberta, the Yukon, and tell you what we should be doing. But I will tell you, Alberta should, maybe not a good one, and but by some we've made, if you where you want to be to and to in the future. Now, things change. And my God, there are times I would wish there was cocaine drops. But there aren't any change. Just as changes, it's allowable for women's bathing costume. So the world does this, but we often don't pay attention to it. We don't remember. And memory, fleeting, and that issues, I think, that with, a great deal of problems. The loss of bison off the plains is a historic note now. People don't really think much about it. They don't recognize what a pivotal bison plains ecology, and they don't think about what they can see that big charisma fauna means in terms of the ecology. Now, in terms of fish, now, before I talk about this, I will talk about, I've done a bit of work with the Guinai in southern Alberta, the Blackfoot, and with them, their memory goes long before police officers set up shop in Alberta, or what would become Alberta. And one of the, I think, pivotal stories in my mind was having Guinai people bull trout project together with us, and listening to them, it turned out all of them from the fish eater clan. Now think about it. These are people that subsisted on bison and elk, yet they were part of the clan, because at one time bison didn't exist, and they subsisted on bull trout. That portion of the tribe subsisted on bull trout. One can only imagine what the abundant bull trout must have been for a second ancestry to exist on. Now, when the Northwest Mounted Police came, one of the things that they did was they made note on sort of the natural features of the posts that they were at. And this one caught me from 1880. They were talking about what was apparently cut. They talked about like the fact that 12 and a half is an upward in these streams. I can tell you, in living memory, there has not been a cutthroat in Southern Alberta anywhere close to 12 and a half and upwards. So again, it's a fragmentary of what we once had. And I think a stellar of what might be possible, but I'll get into that. Now, I'm going to use some archival photos because I think the ways that, in spite of the fact have good information from the past, we didn't have working in the 1900s on status reports. In fact, have them working on consistent systematic fishery inventories will actually be 19 and probably later in 70s. So the information, the vision, what we had really in some of these photographs. So here's a couple of anglers in 1883. They caught about 70 or 80 from a stream that no longer has trout. Here's 4 guys, and I think the child was out for a day's trip. They caught 25 pounds of trout out of a stream small enough you could step. This is a little stream that flows to the Porcupine Hills to the Willow Creek Creek. Remarkably, trout, pure green, persisted from this time period until years ago, and they winked out in real time. And that's a story that is that this is the fact real time. These guys went up fishing creek, which is a bow, now runs through the creek, and rather remote fishing. Now, sometimes we angler stories because anglers are better at liars. Well, here a department of the federal department for your pamphlet on the resources region advertised that there were backs grazing an average pounds. To put this in perspective, the world record is less than pounds. So if any of you have ideas about whether the government tells them, maybe here's some evidence to consider. Interviewing people about Arctic grayling, an amazing repertoire of remembrances to grayling. The fact that regularly they felt there was plenty. They actually grayling winter consumption. They ate the same frequent moose. They ate every day, and they could just sit down to the river anytime. Again, the vignette past tells what the stats was in the past. Big fish. This is a bull caught in southern Alberta, 1820. I estimate 18-pound bull. Actually surveying the border in British. The cook, bull trout, like bull trout, feed a hungry 5 people. We've never seen in our memory of even some of the biologists. Now we know there was big, because look at the size of those rods. So another indication we've come from. The other thing we're fortunate to out of favor of equestrian bathing. And again, the opportunity to report the stream and keep fish is complete from our memory, except in these photographs. Now, there's the sense Michael has talked to you about the late game. There's this sense that these things, this wide range of for fish, the size of the fish population, largely deteriorating. And it's interesting and easy to quote. But in that time period, lots of things changed. In fact, the Northwest, a guy out with the North Mounted Police in 1876 commented on changes that he'd seen in the next 14 years. And his comment fished about the river's team. Now it is much different. So the changes that happened were happening long before our memory and even some of the recorded available. And I think that's pivotal to help. And if we don't have historical memory, if we don't have ways of measuring archival photographs like this, things will slip away. And did. Other things were logging started on a commercial cave in Alberta. This is a log plywood river that 3 miles. It tells you something about the scale of each of the early pieces. And of course, roads, the mechanism for getting downstream was, so you can imagine massive log and the possible they would have had on ecology. There was a time they had the reduction, and so they promoted the overgrazing foothills, sheep and cattle, to reduce they perceive the fuel load and the fire risk. The other thing was this landscape with our Europeanization. Sidebar picture in 18. I like to say the last time being in downtown Calgary. Well, here's in the Bow River. That's a scene Calgary from almost vantage point. And so and actually changes in a blink of an eye that unfortunately do not pay attention to. And of course, the colonization. My grandfather up rough fifth land. In some way, the impacts that those early setters made on are the things Michael and I remedy. You know, part of it, the legacy from ancestors. Now we're trying. Of course, the other thing starting to develop power production. You know, of course, running from these lights, there's electricity, and that requires to these. And of course, the petrol started early, and it changed dramatically. Of all of the end use impacts happened. You can only imagine you see the material coming off of that early rig site, what the impact would have been on our Brits and native fish. And of course, off-highway vehicle is a new thing. This is something that's started a long time. It's the scale of it. It's ratcheted up. And a lot of us came from land. We came from areas, our favorite food, and we thought fish species enough. And so we've got to import and brown trout, wherever else. And we often thought rivers And so the only achieve better is by stock natives. And of course, in some cases, on particular that are close, they're like native rainbow. There's a lot of unsafe sex happening. And the hybridization and takes away the population of native. And there is antipathy to native fish, bull trout. And of course, one of the things that we humans hate is competitors. We hate predators, and bull trout predators on fish. Like, and here we have a game association telling the provincial government that they should dive entering pools where trout live. Now, you would think that some of the attitude towards bull trout has changed, but I will tell you, it still lingers on. And it lingers on in ways that I think it's a perverse reaction, ability to get on with it. And then there's, you know, and the one in the is the famous grassy coal mine, the old, which is now there's a new coal mine by an Australian coal company, and it's all of the features, you know, like your mirror that starts to bedevil us. You know, Mike has given a good description of how to sort things out, to figure out what is the mechanism that is causing changes. And instead of pointing a finger around, in fact, take your hand and fold your fingers in. And when you're pointing at someone, think of it this way, pointing back at you. Some of it's our fault. And of course, what in particular watersheds, one close to my heart is this watershed, the absolutely unique trout population, disappeared. You know, from the 16 to 1965, they're on, and unfortunately, they are largely. But we don't put up any cenotaphs, any marker for the demise of some patients. If we did, might have a more official effect. We'll understand what could happen when we do action. So this is where we're at. These are all the native species that exist on the eastern slopes, and all of them are in the world in one form or another. Arctic grayling concern, and in fact, recent genetics that we actually have several different populations of Arctic grayling. We should be paying those because some of those winking out that mountain white, which used to be some of the most fun. Everybody would go out and them to smoke winter. We don't know that, and I suspect watersheds that are winking out as well. Athabasca, Michael talked to, endangered, bull trout are threatened, or west throat trout. We don't have to go to some, and the answers, Zeus has got it. And when he said, how did it go soon? That's what happened to the populations. It's not just trout. It's a lot of our to be treasured. They out, some close to waking out, and without attention, will continue to do so. So, again, going to standing in front of the group. This is a picture of Indian Survey, Willow Creek, 90. And even if you don't appreciate any riparian health, just look at the preponderance of woody vegetation. That tells you something about the health of the riparian area and also of the stream environment. Here's a angler's trip in those days. These three guys got about 40 pounds of cutthroat trout from Willow Creek. 40 pounds of native trout from Willow Creek in 1902. Well, that 90 scene, here it is today. You can't catch you can't catch in most of Willow. Gone. They went and insidious and cumulative, like your face in front of the mirror. How did it happen? Well, you can part this. Phil's done a good job of this with some other examples. Arctic grayling for the streams drainage. And you can should time the March of March. Not sure we should call it this anymore. That happened, and now here's where we're at with most Arctic grayling programs. Either gone or so close to being gone that people don't pay much attention anymore. And I want you to think about it this way, and become really an epiphany for me is that this isn't stuff that happened historically. This happened in my lifespan. This happened in my lifespan. Oftentimes this happened under my watch. And so history wasn't just made yesterday. It's still being made, especially when you pay attention. We stopped value these populations. That's what we're doing to them and what we could do to slow down that march ultimately. It's a variety of things. Again, you can go through the finger pointing as well as anyone. It's everything at the time, same piece of land. And so as happen in terms of the sort of watershed, things like become more prevalent, ratchets up to the point where it's difficult for trout to make a living. It's difficult for food base, the aquatic vertebrates to make a living, and they disappear. Sort of like the Cheshire cat in Alice in Wonderland that disappeared. The tip of the tail was there, and then it was gone. And I think part of it is this propensity, and Alberta's a good example of can do everything where all the time on the same piece of land, multiple use. Well, we multiply. Use should be abuse because you do everything all the time on the same piece of land. In fact, that some of the indicators shape integrity endure. Michael showed you of this as a student who looked at what the impact of various rates of and roading. And the important thing is inflection. And once that inflection happens, if we don't at that point try and reverse the trend, things go along populations and a whole bunch of critters. And part of it's like road density. Michael talked about in a context. The irony, you know, somewhere 0.5 kilometers square is a threshold. It's an ecological threshold. Above that, start going. In the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, our pivotal watersheds, 50% of Albertan water comes from the foothills and mountains. We're at about 6 kilometers per squared. And sometimes growing because we're very good at building more roads and trails. We're really poor at erasing them from the land. And if we want to maintain quality, biodiversity, recreational opportunity, reversing it is something. It's when you're sitting on the edge of a cliff, maybe the first step should be backward. This is sort of what it looks like in real time. this is a watershed that has about 6 kilometers of road per kilometer squared. I was out there in a summer rainstorm. In 10 minutes, from gin to water, put your palm, disappeared a centimeter. Over time, repeating that time after time, things start to go. And then this is game. Colleague of mine infiltrated vehicle clubs, wanted to understand the psyche of the people off-highway vehicle, because they say they're conscious. They say they do. And so he, one of the OE operators, spin their tire in the middle of a ford on the green, producing a big sediment. And later on, and said, well, wouldn't it be wise to slowly go through and not create that sort of sediment? And the response was, don't worry, the fish have got you. I missed the day in class. And again, part of it is the inability to see. If just because you don't see it, won't see it, can't see it, doesn't mean it isn't there, that it isn't happening. And so I think this is part and parcel of, my advice to you in the Yukon is developing the ability to see what's there, to see what's happening, and to start seeing how that's impacting the things that you value as Yukoners. And I get the sense from friends that are Yukoners that you have a strong sense that, healthy fish and wildlife populations, watersheds that have a high degree of ecological integrity are important to your psyche as Yukoners. Well, if you want that to persist, then you got to start these observational things. Because Ogden Nash said, progress may have been all right once, but it went on too long. And so you can't count necessarily governments and the corporations to set the tone and the tangent and the trend for progress. I think you have to ask some very penetrating, maybe even persistent questions about what's the value of this program? What's the cost? Are there residuals that I are going to have because of this? Coal mining in Alberta has created a legacy of unfortunate impacts, like tar sands mining, like the oil and gas industry. We don't have enough money in our fund to fund the reclamation of tar sands, coal mines, or abandoned oil well sites. And who's going to pay? It's going to be Alberta. I'm not sure in the balance that we got full value for whatever the royalties we got are, if we end up paying the full toll for reclamation. So this is about shifting benchmarks, and Churchill wasn't thinking of trout, but I think it applies. The further you can look back, the more you can see forward. And, some of this is simply maybe going back and looking in family albums, looking in the archives of your museums of where you were with populations or even wildlife populations. What did it look like in the past? Because that's a vision that you might be able to use to say, this is what I want for the future. So this is the reality that you're facing. It's the reality we're facing in Alberta. We all think we speak with a full pie's worth of resources. By the way, I will go to extremes to provide images of what this looks like at the expense of my midriff. What we're ending up with is not a pie's worth of. We're ending up with decline the slice. You and you may not have in a front close to it. You have a much larger slice of the pie left than we in Alberta. think about how much of the slice of the pie you want to retain. How much is important to you, things that you hold as Yukoner. And again, this is a elderly fellow fixed me with days at one of our East trout regulation meetings. Would consider your best day of fishing my worst. And you know, it's a pivotal statement. It really made me think about where I stood in that pie of resources, and what I might have to reconsider where my are and where success is measured. Because if you measure based on today, you're only a thin slice of the pie. So the reason I use fish in this as a fish story is that, remember, fish are a product of the land. They're a product of the landscape. And we have gone in Alberta, in many cases, from the key attributes of fish habitat, which are cold, clean, complex, and connected, to warmer, dirtier, simpler, and fragmented. This is a simple mantra that I think you can consider for the watersheds that you're familiar with. And to ask you, what do the presence and abundance and distribution of fish tell you? Well, I think they're indicators. Everything that happens in the watershed runs by or through fish. They're indicators of something that might be going wrong or watershed management that's going right. If it's going wrong, it could be the sentinels that are the distant early warning signal of what's going wrong. So again, it's presumptuous of Alberta to tell you and to you. This is where I think Alberta should have gone. May still in some cases have opportunity to go, but a place have much better opportunity to go to based on the losses done. So the first one is reduce the footprint. Make sure that progress doesn't overwhelm the things you hold dear. Think about natural processes, floods, fire, drought, and make sure those are part of any planning and that they're not additional to land use activity. Ecosystem-based planning. By the way, the picture I think is exemplary of land use planning in Alberta. You can do better. You have to do better. Assess cumulative effects. Again, remember your face growing old in the mirror. So hold up a mirror on the pace, the intensity, the temporal and spatial consequences of those land activities.
And do what?
Ongoing or promoted.
You've got opportunities to do what?
Ensure there's much
Kill
better
fish? Have more fish? What are you trying to do?
happen on the landscape.
I mean, the biologist.
Yeah.
Actually regulated. They don't erode the integrity and biodiversity that require that sort of intact land. Because it's really about the contest of conservation and development. And development always has their thumb on it, far more than interest. And so recognizing that and making a loud voice for conservation is pivotal to making sure that the interests of Yukoners, as I understand it, are maintained. There's damage there. Restoration is key. It's making sure that we protect intact stuff and rebuild, glued back together the damage. So do what you can to stop making things worse and try to make things better. That's a message to government and to industry. Where to go? Respect the law.
Wonder that they don't.
Gary
When
Larson.
when some guy, some Yahoo gets up and
Both
does
sides are and the limit.
like you bozo.
This is closer to
Do
the
your fish.
Yeah.
Like who, what, when, where, and why? Like what?
engage in better processes. We had a strong public process engagement initiative and it's lost under the current
Oh, well.
to the point where it's become
Just wait for it to run out of power.
the question. This is where, as Yukon, opportunity to see what the Yukon to do and to look like in the future.
It's like half-assed.
And to do that, you have to measure, monitor, set benchmark, understand where you from past, where you are, and where you want
Yeah,
requires
neither party. What's the goal?
science.
What are we aiming for?
Michael talked about in terms of your.
Like you had this much. Are you trying to get back to that many fish? Like
You also
what?
have to think about
What?
measures.
Okay.
What are the metrics that are going to be used? Make sure
He's
those,
asking the question. He's come up
whether
with the metrics.
quality or fish abundance and distribution or caribou or grizzly,
Isn't that what they do?
potential of moving in a way that we're not going to erode honors want. Some of those benchmark success, are understanding you can't be what you can't see. And so that's what I use archival photographs to help people see where we come from and what is in the realm of the possible for the future if you actually choose those as your biological benchmarks to work towards. And I'm not going to say it as articulate as Michael did, but listen to the voices of the past, listen to the voices of the present that come from both the scientific community and the Aboriginal community and the users that have a history on some of this material. Lovelock said it best. If we continue business as usual, our species will never again enjoy the life and verdant world that we had only 100 years ago. In your case, it may have just been 50, maybe 25. But the opportunity is now. Please take it. I'd like to come back to a Yukon that resembles the wild. Again, you don't have to listen. You don't have to listen to people, but you got to. Because unless someone cares a whole lot,
Whatever he thinks is a wild.
it's not. Thank you so much.
Get rid of all the people. Okay, I'm going to plug it in my room. It's not charging at it.
Thanks so much, Lorne. And Michael, if you can join us back here as well. Yes. We do have an opportunity for some questions. And I have a remote mic here. Can you hear this one? No, I can't hear it.
That's my wife calls me remote mic.
Hmm?
Hello? Oh, it's not working.
But by the way, thanks again to Mike Quinn and to Miles for all of
Nice room.
the a round of applause in this.
Mic 2. Louise?
I don't know how much fracking happens in Alberta. I do know lots happens in northern BC. How does it affect the fish?
Oh, fuck.
Well, I think that the first aspect is that it's a loss of water out of natural systems.
Yeah, walk off the stage and answer the question.
fracking right now in central Alberta in the Blind Medicine rivers is resulting in some reaches of the river and some flow periods to dry up completely. What I learned in school was fish need water. Yeah, and we do too. Then there's the question of what happens to that water.
You know what?
Or does it affect
It's simple enough to know that you're supposed to speak into the microphone. Okay, so you do that, and then you walk away. Do you think it's connecting? Like you're not, that people can't hear you? Is there something wrong with you that you don't realize you have to speak into the mic?
Yeah. My wife calls me remote Mike. So I spend time in the wintertime up in Jasper. The bull trout spawn in the fall time. And their eggs incubate all winter long and they hatch in the springtime. And if you're a egg in the wintertime, you're living at 1 degree Celsius. Maybe half a degree Celsius, maybe 1.5 degrees Celsius. So I monitored this stream for 3 winters. Half, 1, half, 1.5, half, 1, half, 1. And then one Christmas, 23rd of December, boom, -2. The difference between plus 0.5 and -2 is ice and dead eggs. It was -2, -3, and then back up. And on that day, there was an earthquake. Well, it wasn't an earthquake. It was a fracking quake. And it was just a little shift in the earth. And the temperature dropped by 1 degree. Water, ice. So, wow, what a subtle little thing. And nobody's out there in the wintertime. I am measuring water temperature to the nearest 1/10 of a degree. Such a subtle change wiped out an entire year class in a lake. Such a subtle thing. Fracking was 25 kilometers away. The explosions were 25 kilometers away from the reds. Who saw that? My computerized monitoring. Yeah, such a subtle thing. And it can be subtle when we're not there. So as my elders, well, my elders call me their scientist. Look at the whole system. And we can't, it can be subtle, a subtle change and a huge effect. So we've got to be careful about these little things. The cool thing is, it was in a remote part of Jasper, so we lost a whole year class. But the bull trout live, and they spawn at age 8, age 9, age 10, 11, and 12, and 14-year classes, and then we lose one, it's okay. If it happened in the crow's nest, where we have 1-year class of bull trout, it's the loss of the population. Abundance and age gave the resilience that they could take that hit. The crow's nest couldn't take that hit. The solution is resilience, abundance. The solution is what we say. Increase your distribution. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Increase your abundance. Get some resilience going. Increase your age class strength. Get some temporal resilience going. Distribution, abundance, structure. Elders tell me health. But yeah, there's a way to have both. Oh, you're going to frack? Cool. If you're going to frack, we'd better close the sport fishery so they get older. So if you want to frack, you get the approval of the Yukon Fish and Game Association. No problem. It's called a spectrum of allies analysis.
Michael calls it a fracking quake. Maybe you should employ the other F word.
Isn't that interesting? The solution I just told you says find allies.
Yeah.
The solution I told you was find allies.
Yes.
Speaking of allies, there's First Nations are starting to try and have a legal identity for a herd of caribou or a river or a mountain range or whatever. Do you think that is a good ally for these populations that are in decline?
That's a really interesting point. What about a Species Risk Act? What about a legal protection? So I view it as cool, there's levels of bureaucracy, and those are just allies. And I do a spectrum of allies analysis and how will this help? And it's none of them are the answer. They're all tweaks. But that that might bring me some legal allies, but don't hang all your hopes on it. Don't hang all your hopes on species at risk legislation. He taught me how to be really irresponsible as a bureaucrat and not follow rules. And you did, buddy. And try to find the solutions. So cool, but I won't be distraught if it doesn't get protection. Species at Risk Act, cool, but I won't be distraught if it doesn't happen. I'll still work with the elders. I'll still work with building resilience. I'll still work with, yeah. So don't put all your hopes on one ally that's flaky. But bring everybody. The Cree people tell me it's a package deal. It has good points and it has bad points. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not the solution. It's not a death knell either. That's just my opinion.
The other thing, and Michael's touched on it, there are a number of mechanisms, but at the heart of them is something more fundamental. Do you care about the fish? Do you care about the watershed? And in some respects, we look for legal opportunities, and we should, because they are often the levers. But if we don't have a constituency of people that know and care about these things, all the legislation, all the rules, all the regulations are of, I think, minimal value. So part and parcel, I think, of this is each one of you knows someone, and maybe you should talk to them about the value of fish, the value of caribou, or the value of a clean watershed, of an ecosystem that's, alive and functioning, and create that constituency within your own communities so that when the issues rise and the legal options are rolled out, all of a sudden people don't react negatively to that. They actually say, yes, we need this.
Yeah, politicians don't lead. They jump on the bandwagon when they see which direction it's going. That's why we elect them. We elect them to do our wishes. So talk to a neighbor, talk to your friends, talk to some elders, talk to some folks, and change the direction the bandwagon goes, and you'll find politicians that'll drive it. Margaret Mead, don't think that one person can't change the world. In point of fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Other questions?
Have we stunned you into silence?
All around the world, democracies are being weakened by populists and bad actors and people having poor judgment in electing persons with personality disorders. How vulnerable are species at risk, or any species in Alberta, due to the populism in the politics right now? It just seems to me that the current government is working really hard to dismantle regulations and maybe even the Justice Department and the electoral regime. Am I wrong?
I had to come all the way to the Yukon to realize how democracy is at risk in Alberta. Sure it is. And I think, I'll just give you one example. The Upper Smoky watershed is part of a sub-regional planning exercise right now. That planning exercise should be to engage the public in what they want the Upper Smoky watershed to be and to do for the future. The way the Alberta government has arrayed this is, here's the answer. We want more logging and more oil and gas development. What was the question? And so it's one small example of continuing to chase the shiny things of industrial development. Coal mining is another one. For the love of God, Alberta does not need to go backwards in time for coal mining. But, you know, that's where our politicians seem to want to take us for whatever reason. So I think all of these things affect species at risk, whether it's the winking out of 2 of the 3 woodland caribou populations in the Upper Smoky, or remnant cutthroat and bull trout populations from coal mining up and down the eastern slopes. So sure, it's a concern. And the answer comes back to, you know, the answer to the gentleman before you is that until we develop an attitude that biodiversity resources are part of our treasures, that we depend on them, they're actually part of the economy. The economy and the environment aren't separate, they're 2 sides of the same coin. And that exploiting the economy without thinking about the repercussions on the environment is a zero-sum game.
We have time for maybe, oh, Mike, you have a comment?
So you're asking me, an employee of the Alberta government, to answer that question. Look, an eagle. The Buddhist in me says, in impermanence is the salvation of the world. And I always view these governments as a surfer, right? There's peaks and there's troughs. And when I'm in a good peak, I'll surf and I'll build resilience with walleye. We had a few years of pretty strong government, Miles, and we brought walleye back big times. And what that did was gave the walleye population resilience for bad times if they might happen. And no matter what they do, the walleye are going to survive. So I really view this in the long term. I'm waiting for the next wave that I can surf. But while I'm down here, I'm building resilience and things. This is actually a good time. Ministers either pay attention to what I'm doing or ignore me. When they pay attention to what I'm doing, I'm in trouble. I've been fired twice. That's bad. When they ignore me, I do all this work, really cool work, and I get things done for the next time I get paid attention to or I get chewed up. So that's just how it goes. You've really taught me to, when nobody's looking, do your hard work. And I'll weather the storm. The bull trout will weather the storm. And the storms always come. There's never blue sky permanently. Hey, you better look at the peaks and troughs, and in impermanence is the salvation of the world. I build resilience when I can. We've done that well, hey, Miles? I think you've done a great job. We. There's no I in team except in French.
The Yukon is a large place, and I'm very new to it, but I understand in some places it looks like a lot's going on, and in some places it retains that natural beauty that it has had since time immemorial. What would your advices be from long careers in conservation if groups, whether that's a territorial government or First Nations governments or conservation organizations, have limited resources and a big place, as we are trying to fill in this tapestry you just described, boxes, a larger worldview, do you recommend that we point those resources in places where we know things are going on? Or should we be looking into some of those wild spaces for the benchmarks? Should we pay attention to where we think the slide is? Or should we be looking more to the surrounding area to understand what may have slid?
Yes.
He's right.
I don't think you can afford to pick one over the other. I think it's absolutely important to understand in those areas of high land use or potential high land use what the possible repercussions should be. But if you don't have good inventory information, a foundation of the wild stuff, how will you know what sort of a target to have for your areas that are starting to be impacted by land use? Because that becomes the litmus test for what you might want to see as Yukoners happen in those development areas, while the other areas form your benchmark of success.
Yeah, I was working up in Yellowknife, and the story was, this is the Northwest Territories. Fishing is really good. And I go, cool. Can I go out just out of town and get a 20-pound pike? And they, oh no, you got to go way down the road. You gotta, well, you just told me overfishing is the problem. So be careful about believing your own propaganda. We say the Yukon's really good. Why is that? Because it's the Yukon. And why is it really good? Because the fishing's really good. Why? Because it's the Yukon. Really? You got any data on that? So rather than believe your own propaganda, do the big survey and recognize a few places where the grayling are gone. We didn't catch a grayling set. We fished 4 places. That's not great grayling fishing. That's okay. As long as we understand, yeah, we got some local over-harvest habitat sediment issues, but we know the perspective. We know that's only 4% of the Yukon. Maybe it's 20% of the Yukon. Find out now so you can monitor that. Don't go to, well, let's go to a really good place and we'll monitor that and see if it changes. The last place to change will be the best places. That's how populations decline. So you better survey everything. Check to see if your story, hey, the Yukon's great fishing. It says so in the tourist brochure. Is that true?
And I don't think the inability to catch a grayling had to do with the guide or the angler. Just saying.
Well, we've kept people in their seats here for a couple hours. Thank you for sticking with us. Persistence is a key theme of the talk tonight. One of the things that continues to amaze me about talking to Lorne and Michael about their collective experience that's probably in the cumulative area of over 80 years experience in the business is that the importance of persistence. And the ability to stay interested and excited, and spending the last few days here, being able to get out and onto the land a little bit with Michael and Lorne. I can tell you that they're just excited, seeing a yellow rump warbler or the first crocuses coming up at Miles Canyon, as probably they were when they first stepped into the field. And the ability to do that, continue to do that over time, is what will get us through these the kind of challenges we're faced with. And although some of the presentation and some of the data might leave you partially in despair, I think the message is one of opportunity. I think we have a tremendous opportunity because of the range of conditions that still exist here to make some decisions. We've been talking over the last couple of days about how often we revisit assumptions that were made during development approval processes or whatever projects, and we make these assumptions, we make the decisions, we move on, and we very rarely go back and double check those assumptions. And we're bound to make the same mistakes if we don't check those assumptions. So that's another key message I think I heard from one of many that I heard in the presentations tonight. So again, thank all of you for being here. Next YSI meeting will be June 28th. It'll be our annual general meeting. Stay tuned for the presentation topic for that one. And please put your hands together for Michael and Lorne and their presentation here. Thanks.